Tonight, several developing stories as we come on the air. Former President Trump returns to the campaign trail with his new running mate 1 week after the attempt on his life. President Biden facing off with his own party over his future in the race, and tensions rising overseas as Israel launches airstrikes in Yemen. First, Trump with his new running mate J.D. Vance taking the stage in Michigan, the key battleground state. The two campaigning together for the first time since Vance joined the ticket. And tonight, new developments in the investigation into that assassination attempt. Authorities looking at whether the suspect used a drone prior to the event where he opened fire. Our team reporting from tonight's rally in Michigan. President Biden's doctor today saying his COVID symptoms continue to improve ahead of his promised return to the campaign trail next week. His aides huddling behind the scenes as pressure mounts on Biden to drop out of the race. But not everyone is on board. What we're learning about two powerful voices inside the Democratic Party and their support for the president. Selena Wang with late reporting. The aftershocks reverberate from the global cyber meltdown. Travelers still facing thousands of delays and cancellations as airlines and companies struggle to get back to normal. Breaking overseas, Israeli jets strike Houthi targets in Yemen 1 day after a drone strike in Tel Aviv. And what Secretary of State Blinken is now saying about the latest ceasefire talks. Fires and floods. The record heat in the West intensifies, fueling new brush fires and evacuations in California as severe weather and a flood threat expands east. The urgent manhunt for a suspect accused of gunning down a beloved postal worker in Chicago. Tonight, new details in the investigation. Tensions escalate in Bangladesh after violent clashes have already claimed more than 100 lives. Dramatic video. 7 officers hurt when a high-speed chase ends in a multi-vehicle crash. Tributes pouring in for longtime Texas Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. And America Strong tonight, the amazing corgi whose command of sign language is inspiring millions.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight.
Good evening and thanks for joining us on this Saturday. I'm Whit Johnson. We begin tonight with the race for the White House. As President Biden faces growing pressure from some Democrats to drop out, former President Donald Trump is back on the campaign trail just 1 week after an assassination attempt in Butler, Pennsylvania. Trump and his new running mate, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, campaigning together for the first time in the key battleground state of Michigan. An enthusiastic crowd, some camping out overnight to attend the rally, others wearing T-shirts with those historic images of Trump raising his fist after the shooting. We're also learning new details about the suspect in the assassination attempt. Authorities are investigating whether he used a drone to survey the location prior to the rally where he opened fire, and how the Trump campaign is preparing for any possible changes on the Democratic ticket. ABC's Jay O'Brien leading us off from Michigan.
Tonight, Donald Trump back on the campaign trail.
We're going to get it back bigger, better, stronger than ever before.
His first rally since that attempt on his life exactly a week ago.
I stand before you only by the grace of Almighty God. That's true. I shouldn't be here.
And the former president campaigning for the first time with his new running mate, Senator J.D. Vance. Growing up in rural Ohio, Vance bringing his personal populist message to key Rust Belt voters in this vital swing state of Michigan, a state Trump narrowly won in 2016, which President Biden picked up in 2020.
What is this campaign about if not restoring the American dream for every child in this country? I want your kids to have the same blessed life that I did.
Outside, some voters camping overnight to show their support.
Wow, they made that shirt fast, huh?
Yeah. Wearing newly made T-shirts with that image of Trump in the moments after those shots rang out.
He's not afraid to fight for us, and we're not afraid to fight for him.
Believing they see a changed man.
I think it kind of maybe brought him down, maybe to our level.
Trump recently pitching a message of unity, but quickly pivoting back to making false claims about the 2020 election and assailing his political opponents.
Crooked Joe Biden.
Meantime, new details emerging about the suspect, Thomas Matthew Crooks, who fired 8 shots during that Trump rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. Firefighter Corey Comparator killed, and 2 people hospitalized. Authorities now investigating whether Crooks used a drone to survey the rally location prior to the shooting. Unlike last week's rally, today's event indoors. A comprehensive timeline reviewed by ABC News found law enforcement first spotted the shooter at least an hour before he opened fire, and a sniper had eyes on him up until 6 minutes before the shots rang out. One sniper even meeting with law enforcement on the ground to tell them the shooter's location. Tonight, the gunman's motives remaining a mystery.
And we've already seen the Trump campaign ramp up its attacks on Vice President Kamala Harris amid that speculation about President Biden staying in the race. But Trump voters I talked to here say they want Biden to stay the Democratic candidate because they think that he's easier to beat. Whit?
Jay O'Brien, thanks so much. And turning now to President Biden's aides huddling behind the scenes amid growing calls for Biden to step aside in the presidential race. Biden, recovering from COVID, is promising to get back on the campaign trail next week, as more than 30 congressional Democrats now are publicly calling for him to drop out. ABC's senior White House correspondent Selena Wang reports from Rehoboth Beach, Delaware.
Tonight, as President Biden pledges to fight on, top leaders in his party already looking ahead to what could come next if he drops out. The president vowing to return to the campaign trail next week, his doctor saying his COVID symptoms continue to improve as he isolates in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware. Sources tell me the president is angry that leaders of his own party are turning against him. Now, more than 36 Democrats in Congress are calling on Biden to drop out of the race, including Zoe Lofgren of California.
I think kind of a mini primary, maybe a vetting hosted by former presidents, including Obama and Clinton, would be helpful.
Senators like Elizabeth Warren still backing Biden, but leaving the door open to an alternative.
He has a really big decision to make. But what gives me a lot of hope right now is that if President Biden decides to step back, we have Vice President Kamala Harris, who is ready to step up.
Sources tell ABC News Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, and former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi have all told Biden he'll lose to Donald Trump and drag down Democrats in Congress. Two sources tell me former President Bill Clinton and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton are privately supporting President Biden and have been encouraging donors to stick with him.
I don't believe that we are unanimous in our support for the president. We are certainly unified in that support.
Selena Wang back with us now from Rehoboth Beach, Delaware. And Selena, can you give us a reality check on the timeline here? How soon would Biden have to make a final decision on whether he stays in this race?
Well, Whit, time is running out. Party leaders are planning to hold a virtual roll call to nominate President Biden in the first week of August. After he's nominated, he could still choose to step aside, but then the process gets more complicated. And Whit, some Democrats are arguing that replacing Biden late in the game could run into legal challenges.
And the clock is ticking. Selena, thank you. Tune in to This Week tomorrow morning. Martha Raddatz speaks with House Speaker Mike Johnson about this state of the race, less than 4 months from Election Day. Now to the sluggish recovery after that global tech meltdown, paralyzing businesses, airlines, hospitals, and emergency services. Systems are slowly being restored, but today thousands of flights were still canceled or delayed across the U.S. ABC's Morgan Norwood is at Newark Airport.
Tonight, that global IT meltdown triggering a fresh wave of travel disruptions for passengers. This after nearly 13,000 flights were delayed and more than 3,400 canceled in the U.S. alone Friday.
It's frustration.
We met Sol Slotman and her family at New York's LaGuardia Airport today. Their flight to West Palm Beach canceled, now rebooked on another flight, leaving from a different airport.
This has got to be a huge inconvenience.
Yes, huge.
Across the country today, more than 6,000 flights delayed, more than 1,700 canceled. Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson Airport the hardest hit, with more than 550 flights scrapped. Microsoft says that faulty software update from CrowdStrike caused this meltdown, impacting not just air travel, but banks, government agencies, and other critical services, bringing down 8.5 million Windows devices.
Part of the investigation will lead to recommendations, if not mandates, about what we can do to avoid this in the future. And we really need to look at how our adversaries will see this and try to exploit it.
And tonight, American Airlines saying that they've recovered from this outage. Meanwhile, United and Delta, on the other hand, telling passengers that they can expect flight disruptions throughout the rest of the weekend.
So frustrating for those passengers. Morgan, thank you. Now to the IDF launching retaliatory airstrikes against Houthi military targets in Yemen. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu saying the strikes were a direct response to Friday's attack on Israel. Tensions rising as Secretary of State Antony Blinken says ceasefire negotiations between Israel and Hamas are in the red zone. Here's ABC's Britt Clennon.
Tonight, vast plumes of smoke and fire engulfing the Houthi-controlled port city of Hodeidah in Yemen. Israel launching its first claimed direct airstrike on the Iran-backed group since the start of the Israel-Hamas war last October, calling it retaliation for Friday's deadly drone strike in Tel Aviv and in response to the hundreds of attacks against Israel in recent months. The IDF saying it hit military targets more than 1,000 miles away. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu tonight saying it's clear to Israel's enemies that there is no place that the long arm of the State of Israel will not reach. The Houthis saying Israel struck oil and electricity infrastructure, killing civilians. And tonight vowing a response, saying they will not hesitate to strike back.
With Hezbollah tonight saying that Israel's strikes herald a dangerous new phase, even as talks are at the top of the agenda as Netanyahu heads to the U.S. next week.
Britt Clennon, thank you. Next tonight, new details in the urgent manhunt for the person who shot and killed a beloved postal worker in Chicago. Police say Octavia Redmond, a 48-year-old grandmother and wife, was gunned down while on the job. The suspect fleeing the scene after firing several shots. A $250,000 reward is now being offered for information leading to an arrest and conviction. Here's ABC's Phil Lipoff.
Tonight, an urgent manhunt for the suspect who allegedly killed a Chicago postal worker, gunned down while in front of a home.
One of our own, a postal employee, we take it as seriously as anything we could do in this job.
48-year-old Octavia Redmond delivering mail on Chicago's South Side when police say a man approached at around 11:30 Friday morning and opened fire. Redmond hit several times, later pronounced dead at the hospital. The gunman fleeing in a vehicle.
They need to be prosecuting them. We are federal employees. How dare you? And then you could just think you could just get away with it? My members are scared to go to work.
At the Letter Carriers Union building, the flag flying at half-staff. Redmond, a grandmother, loved by people on her route who say they will remember her generosity and her smile.
It's a loss of life, you know. She's not going home to her family. I know her husband, he's a letter carrier, also assistant union steward at the station. She's just a great person.
Still no word yet on a possible motive for this attack. U.S. postal inspectors are offering a $250,000 reward for information leading to an arrest and conviction.
All right, Phil Lipoff for us tonight. Thank you. Turning now to the record heat out west. More than 30 million Americans under heat alerts from Arizona to Washington state. Those conditions fueling more wildfires like the Fork Fire in the Angeles National Forest near Glendora, California. Evacuation orders issued. And it's a washout across parts of the South with heavy rainfall and flash flooding. Let's get right to meteorologist Leslie Lopez from our Los Angeles station KABC. And Leslie, this heat is not letting up.
No, it's not. I mean, the entire western section of our nation is dealing with some heat. Anyway, from Washington down to California, we're looking at excessive heat warnings, heat advisories. In addition to that, now also competing with air quality concerns and red flag warnings that are going to go along for the next few days. Now, the next 3 days bring in more heat. We could even see some record-breaking heat possible over into areas of Boise, 106, 114 degrees expected in Las Vegas, and Spokane tomorrow could get up to about 108 degrees. Over on the west, southwest, it looks really hot, but then it's the southeast that's dealing with something quite different. Heavy rainfall, periods of rain that could really include flash flood concerns. That's thanks to a stationary front that's just not moving. So the flash flood risk stretching from Texas all the way up into the Carolinas over the next several days, anywhere from 2 to 3 inches of rainfall. So we're not quite done and over with this threat, as it is a very active region. With
Leslie Lopez, it's great to have you. We appreciate it. Overseas now to the growing crisis in Bangladesh after weeks of deadly and violent protests. New video coming in tonight as authorities deploy the army and impose a strict new curfew with a shoot-on-sight order. Let's bring in ABC's Inez de la Catera. And Inez, more than 100 people have already died in these clashes.
That's right, Whit. And those protests turning deadly, with government buildings set on fire, a mob storming the state broadcaster, and police firing back with tear gas and live rounds. At least 110 people have been killed, though it's hard to know just how many casualties there have been, with the government imposing a nationwide internet blackout. The U.S. Embassy in a statement saying reports indicate hundreds to possibly thousands have been injured, adding the situation is extremely volatile. Now, these protests first broke out weeks ago over a new quota system that allocates up to 30% of government jobs to the families of veterans who fought for independence against Pakistan in 1971. The Army has now been deployed in the country's capital to enforce a strict curfew with a shoot-on-sight order. That curfew expected to end at 10 a.m. on Sunday. Whit.
Alarming new details. Inez, thank you. Tonight, tributes are pouring in for longtime Texas Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. Her family announcing her death on Friday night. The Democrat revealing in June that she had pancreatic cancer and was undergoing treatment. She's being remembered as a fierce fighter for justice. Jackson Lee served in the House of Representatives for 30 years. She was 74 years old. There is still much more ahead on World News Tonight this Saturday. A massive fire devastates most of a historic church in Dallas, and the dramatic end to a high-speed chase in Washington state. Next tonight, investigators on the scene after a massive fire destroyed part of a historic church in Dallas. Part of the structure of the First Baptist Church collapsing, the building dating back to the 1890s. Dozens of firefighters spent hours trying to extinguish the flames. No one was hurt. In Spokane, Washington, a high-speed chase ending in a dramatic multi-vehicle crash, and it was all captured on a doorbell camera. Police say 3 suspects fleeing officers. There you see they slammed into an armored police van. Another police vehicle also involved. 7 officers, a police canine, and the suspects were all hurt, all expected to survive. When we come back, the WNBA All-Stars prepare to face off against Team USA. To the index now, an extremely rare lobster named Crush is settling into his new home at Denver's aquarium. The orange crustacean was discovered by staff at a Red Lobster restaurant in Pueblo. They kept Crush off the menu while they tried to find it a new home. Marine biologists say Crush is a 1 in 30 million find and likely the result of genetic and environmental factors. Tonight, the WNBA, the All-Stars, taking on Team USA with Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese teaming up for the first time. Overnight, Atlanta Dream's Alicia Gray making history, winning both the skills challenge and the three-point contest, the first player to win both in the same year. You can watch the game tonight at 8:30 Eastern right here on ABC. And still ahead, the Corgi with an inspirational talent. Finally tonight, America Strong. The Corgi gone viral, inspiring millions.
Come here. Sit.
This 9-year-old Corgi is quickly becoming a social media star.
Do you want...
Her name is Eowyn. Her TikTok and Instagram videos racking up more than 60 million views. All because of her remarkable ability to understand sign language.
See your ears perk up for dinner? Or if I signed like B-A-L-L.
A friendly bark when she recognizes one of her favorite words. Owner Derek Cassis says it all started 6 years ago when his wife, then girlfriend Emily, moved in.
My wife is deaf, and it was quick that Eowyn learned that she's deaf and started picking up on all of the signs that we use at home.
Her first sign word, dinner. It didn't take long before Eowyn expanded her signing vocabulary.
Breakfast, ball, cookie, treat, bone, car. She also has some least favorite signs like B-A-T-H. So if I were to sign like... You wanna...
And recognizing this command to go to Emily.
Look at Emily. And that will signal Eowyn to get your attention.
Eowyn's growing popularity and mastery of American Sign Language now inspiring others to learn it too.
It's inspired a lot of people to learn sign. Emily and I always had this kind of like background goal of trying to make deaf people seem less scary and inaccessible.
Thanks so much for watching tonight. I'm Whit Johnson in New York. Have a great night.
Thank you for making World News Tonight with David Muir, America's most watched newscast.